To get started with battle number one. First of all, just a quick intro. CSS Battle is a great website where we can basically test out our knowledge of CSS, basically by tackling each of these challenges and try to build them out with HTML and CSS. I really like this website because it really pushes developers to kind of think in different unique ways of solving certain problems. And this is somewhat related to what you might do in a real world scenario, right? If you think about it, you're probably working as part of a team and they'll probably give you a design to work on. Maybe not as complex as some of these really ones, like, for example, like if I go to filter, like, um, I'm sure you're probably not going to do these kind of things on a day to day basis for a developer job. But I think it's still cool to kind of know how to do them, right? So we're going to get started with pilot battle number one. We're going to start with the most easiest one possible, which is pilot battle yank, and then we'll kind of go through each one of these and sort of push ourselves a little bit as we sort of complete um, all these challenges, right? So that's the goal. So let's get started. We're going to get started with battle number one right here. I'm going to click on this, and here we have it, right? So just to kind of go over the UI a little bit, sure it's pretty self-explanatory, but I just want to make sure everyone has a good understanding of it. And that's basically, this is a design, this is the output, this is the result that we want at the end, right? And this is what we have right now. As you can see, there's a nice comparison tool that you can do to like the original versus what you have right now, and this helps out really well. So just to kind of walk through, so I mean, we can probably just dive in right here, but I just want to make sure I sort of explain through what my thought process are for how I sort of tackle these things. So from here, this one's pretty simple. Basically, we just have a box within this outer layer, right? We can probably call this the body, or we can probably call this the container. It's really up to you, but like there's various different ways of handling it. I'm probably gonna just call this container as opposed to just body. And inside the container will have another container or another block, I would say, right? And this basically which are different colors and it is a certain width, probably like 200 or 300 pixels, I'm going to assume. So this is how I would approach this, right? So let me just start with the markup first, which is the HTML, right? So we actually have CSS and HTML both in the same page, I guess, which is nice because we were basically just going to work on, we don't have any JavaScript or anything like that, so it should be pretty simple. So of course, all the CSS will live inside the CSS within the style script tag, and all the HTML will live right outside within this div container. So as I mentioned, we'll probably start with the container, right? So this is basically, this div here is basically our outer container. This one, this brown background container, right? Again, we could have probably called that the body, but I'm going to start scratch and make sure we have, because we don't really have body present in here, but we do have an actual body tag sort of living within this environment somewhere. Okay, great. So I'm going to give this div a class of container, right? And again, I can probably target the container here and give it a background of, let's say, well, actually, we have to use this specific background color, right? So I'm going to copy this down and paste it right in there. Everything is good. Again, ignore this part here because we actually have to kind of do it in a little bit different way. I don't need this div anymore because I don't want to specifically target this div. So I'm going to get rid of that, right? And of course, this is the brown background, right? So this is going to basically take up the entire view width and the view height. We could have probably used 100% view width in here, but I'm going to just use 100% as to say basically this container should take up 100% of its parent container, right? Which right now is going to be body anyway. So I'm going to say 100%, and of course we want the height to be 100% as well. And we do have a little problem here, which is this, I'm going to say margin maybe, but so this is what I tend to do whenever I start with any kind of these challenges or any kind of projects where I'm sort of setting up the CSS for the very first time. What I tend to do is I target all the elements, right? And I give this a box sizing border box, and I get rid of all the padding because every browser has its default padding and margin set to it for different elements. So we should make sure we start scratch and make sure everything is pretty much, you know, 0 basically, right? So we don't want to have any kind of side effects as part of it. There we go. We got rid of everything else. Everything is good. We just need the box, which is the green box here. Obviously, this green box is sitting inside the brown box, right? In a sense, right? So it's in a sense it's just child. So if it's a child, we'll probably put it inside within this class div. Sorry, container div. So I'll create another div tag right there, and I'm gonna give this a class of, let's say, block, right? Keep this simple. Great. So all we need to do now is basically target this block here. We're going to give it a background of this color, which is somewhat light green color, I'm going to say. And the width, again, this doesn't have to be like any kind of relative units. We could just make this resemble whatever the output is, which in this case I'm going to say maybe around 200 pixels. I could be wrong. And a height, it looks like a square to me, so I'm going to give it a height of 200 pixels as well. And oh, nice. So actually this looks like pixel perfect right there. Yeah. So I think this looks good to me, right? This basically matches exactly what we have as the output, and I'm happy with it. So again, the structure is very simple. We have a container div, and inside we have another block, and here's the CSS, right? So we use this box sizing and padding. We basically reset all the CSS by default, so we don't have any kind of browser defaults that might bother with what we're trying to get as output. And of course, we're going to target each container and give it a, we're going to target the container div, right, and give it a background, set it width 100%. Again, you could have probably used view width here, or view height for the height, but this works the same way. Again, for the block, give it a background and give it a specific width in here. We give it an absolute width here, so which is still fine because this resembles my output. And that would do it. Just to kind of test it out, let's go ahead and submit this. And when we submit it, it's going to give me a score right there, 600.5 and 100% match. This is the most important part right here. And it looks like we have a match, right? So just to kind of give you guys an example, let's just change the color of the background for the container to something like red. Obviously, this matches everything except the background color. So when I try to submit it, it's going to probably give me like, I don't know, let's take a look, 33% match, right? Obviously terrible. That's how you know you did not do your thing properly. I'm going to press this, or I guess change this back to wherever it was, and I'm going to submit it again. I should have 100%, and it should be good to go. We're going to move on to the next challenge, hopefully, but that should cover Battle 1 Simply Square.